Yes, Manpreet Singh,
Perfect.
you are
Thank you
audible.
so much.
Thanks. Over to you,
First
sir.
of all, thank you to EICBI and Sujitji for having me here today. And this is a very interesting panel discussion when we talk about strengthening the relations between two countries that are already connected since decades or centuries, if I may say so. So it's not something that you're starting from scratch. It is something that you have to actually reinvent. So this is the most interesting part when you say strengthening the relationships and the bilateral cooperation between India and the UK. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, and we have some lovely panelists with us today. We have, like Arun has already introduced briefly, Miss Priyanka. Priyanka Mahanty is the UK director from Kylla. Welcome, Priyanka. Would you be kind enough to please give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Manpreet. Thank you, Arian, and thank you, Sujit and Arun, for organizing this, first of all. And before this, the talks and the speakers were very interesting, and I got a lot of insights into how Europe, UK, and India can work together in the future. And to add more value to this discussion, I think this panel will contribute a bit more. So about myself, I want to keep it short and not bore you all. So I am the UK director for Kylla Corporate Transactions, which is a boutique investment firm headquartered in the Netherlands, and I head the UK side of the operations. So I hail from the beautiful country India, but I've been in the UK for over a decade now. So I have my roots deep in India as well as in the UK. So I understand how both the countries operate. So I have been very active in the financial and investment industry over the past 10 years or so. And before that, I've worked with companies like Larsen and Toubro and Cummins, which are multinational conglomerates in itself. And I've also had the opportunity briefly to work with UK India Business Council. And from there, I've been working with Kylla, which is a boutique investment firm, like I mentioned. And I'm here to talk a bit more about how we can strengthen the cooperation and collaborate better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. So like you mentioned, finance and investments. Well, that is the base for any trade relations, if you really ask me. That's the foundation for wherever you begin. It's like Lord Rami mentioned, it started from £2. That shows your integrity, that shows your dedication, and that shows where you can reach with if you're really dedicated and you know what to do and when to do it. So going back to that, Priyanka ji, how can we see more Indian companies setting up shop in the UK and vice versa?
Sure.
What's your opinion of the same?
So Manpreet, on that, I think Lord as well as Mr. Gaudet also mentioned a bit about how we can kind of accelerate this process of cross-border transactions. So basically, we have a lot of associations and platforms already established by the UK government, like CII, there's FICCI, there's JETCO, there's EICBI, who's kindly organized this event. And these are just a few who are championing the cause of cross-border transactions. And to put things into perspective, India is the second largest investor into the UK. And the UK is the sixth largest investor into India. So you can see that there are very strong trade relations and investment relations happening between both the countries. I think moving forward, currently our trade deals, I think, lie around over 20 billion USD. But I think there is a lot of opportunity and scope to grow it to around 50 to 100 billion in the future. UK companies, on one hand, can take advantage of the youth population available in India. In 2011, it was 50% of the Indian population was under 24 years of age. That is a huge population that the UK companies can take advantage of. And on the other hand, the UK obviously is the best at a lot of things in terms of technology, in terms of education, in terms of pioneering in renewable energy, which is becoming a big demand around the world. So I think that's where UK and India can collaborate in the fields of research, in the fields of education, in the fields of financial technology, as well as, like Lord mentioned, we could look at setting up funds, investments or VC funds, which could kind of promote Indian companies at the SME stage. So that's what I think would kind of help more and more interactions and exchanges between both the countries.
Very true, Priyanka ji. And I think, you very mentioned about the VC funds and how you can set up the company, and especially for small and medium businesses. And with the new laws that have been enacted in India, we've started the OPC, which is a one-person company which can be started in India. So I think that is something that really can be focused upon, and that can assist a British individual also to set up in the in India, and utilize the huge demographic, the huge customer base that is there, and that can be taken up by British companies. And similarly, these things have been enacted in the UK since a while now. So it's pretty much easy for an Indian company or an Indian citizen to go to the UK and set up. So, Priyanka ji, so what do you think? We need to do more to iron out the bottlenecks that are there in these systems.
So in my experience, Manpreet, I have seen a lot of Indian companies who have very, very mature dreams and motivations in terms of reaching out to the world. But in terms of, I think what holds them back is like to set up shop in the UK, I think is the expense factor. Like for SMEs, it's very, very difficult. Our FX rates are incredible. Like each pound translates into nearly 100 rupees. So it's very difficult for a small sized SME to come to the UK, kind of capture the market here. And UK is a one point, I would say, source to access the Western market. Like even if you have to move to the US, if you have some understanding of the UK, I think that gives you a better advantage of being an Indian company. Like you'd see a lot of companies who've kind of moved to the UK, for example, Oyo, there's Ola, who are kind of spreading their success in countries like the UK, and I think the world is an oyster for them, because I think they can move on to other countries once they've established themselves here. So the whole idea of people like us to come together in such a forum is, Manpreet, I think it's very important that we put our brains together and kind of make it easier for even UK companies to go to India, because India has a few bottlenecks, like we all know about them. Like bureaucracy is one of them. There's a bit of red tapeism. You have to like fill in a lot of forms. So how can we make these easier for a foreign company? It could be a UK based company or a European company. Once they go to India, how can we make their lives easier? How can we shorten the time span required currently to kind of go and register a company in India and set up shop there, and vice versa. In UK, it's pretty easy for an Indian company to come and basically register themselves, have appoint maybe a UK director, and start start their operations. We have to make the UK companies' life easier as well from the Indian perspective, because India is a very, very large country, very diverse population, and at the same time, a huge consumer market. So if a lot of companies are not going to India, I think they are losing out on a lot, because you have a huge middle class population who could actually buy into these services and products that the UK companies have to offer. So how we can come together and make these things easier, these iron out these bottlenecks, is I think the task that we all have to take back from this session.
So rightly said. And I think we all are aware that every country has its own set of challenges and its own advantages, of course. So keeping on that, I'll be getting back to you, Priyanka. I would like to now invite Mr. Pranav Bhanot. Pranav is the co-founder of the India-UK Legal Exchange Program. Welcome, Pranav to this session.
Hi there, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry, I'm in between the campaign. We've got elections next week, so I'm sorry, I'm in the car at the moment.
No problem at all. I'll try to be quick.
That's okay. No. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, what are the current hurdles that you think are preventing a closer business cooperation between the UK and Europe and in India?
You see, I speak from a legal perspective, and I think Priyanka's made some very good comments, and so have the speakers before me. So thank you all very much. I think at the moment, the key difficulty from a legal perspective is the lack of liberalization of the legal markets in India. I think there is so much potential. There is a massive middle class, as Priyanka has said. But I think, if India is going to be the hub for more and more corporations from around the world, and particularly the UK, if it's going to be the place where startups are going to thrive from the UK and Europe, then I think their legal teams and their lawyers need to follow. And I appreciate there is all sorts of sentiments as to whether, law firms should be able to set up in India. I appreciate there is some anxiety from currently formed law firms in India as to what will happen to the legal market if international firms come in. However, I do feel that a prerequisite of having more and more corporations going into India is that their legal teams can follow. And so I very much hope that beyond, the very kind of the special areas that already allow for international law firms going in, I very much hope that more and more international firms can follow. I think it can only be a benefit for India, as well as the trading relationship between different nations, including the UK and India itself.
Pranav, so what do you think? There's more scope for the small firms or the larger firms that you think that need to access India, such a huge legal system, if I may say so, within India. So do you think there's more small and medium companies that are into the legal operations, or the large ones, if you might say so?
I think a mixture. I mean, I have these massive firms coming in with what's going to happen to the current Indian firms, and I can completely understand that. But there are many boutique firms that are now setting up in the UK that are servicing the fintechs, servicing the startups, who have all got their eyes in India. So I think actually just being able to have any organization, any legal law firm to potentially set up shop in India, I think can only be a benefit from a trading perspective and from making India a more attractive place for organizations to set up. But you see, I think there's also a fundamental other issue beyond just the legals. IPOS Mori, which does a lot of our polling in this country and abroad, did a recent poll. And one thing they said was they did a survey on how much of an interest there is between young millennial Indians and young millennial British people. And one of the very interesting stats they came up with is 74% of Indian nationals know a fair or good amount about the UK, but only 26% of British millennials know a good or fair amount about India. So what that really tells me is that there is a gap. Young Indians are more interested in the UK from this survey than UK nationals are about India. And I think really we've got to close that gap. There has to be a more focused interest in the millennials in the Britain over to look at India. It can't just be one way. And I think that's really going to be fundamental as far as trade is concerned.
Actually, that is very rightly said by you. So what do you really think, we need to come together as more of a people-to-people contact, or it has to be more like a government-driven effort?
You see, there's no question, as Lord Rami Ranger has said, Ian Duncan Smith has said, the governments, they're very, they get on very well. We saw that. We saw the sensitivities in Great Britain when Boris Johnson had to cancel his plans to go to India 2 weeks ago. We saw how sensitively that was dealt with by the government. I think the government relations are very strong. My concern isn't with the government. My concern is from people to people, from the next generation of millennials in Great Britain to the millennials in India. Because if people aren't connecting, if people don't have the appetite in the Great Britain to connect with the people in India from a millennial perspective, then trade is going to come to a standstill in any event. So one of the reasons we set up the legal exchange program was for lawyers, junior lawyers and senior lawyers from UK and India to at least get some better understanding about how the two countries are operating from a legal perspective, from a policy perspective, from a courts perspective. And that's really our aim. We want to create a greater interest between lawyers of the two countries. And I think we need to do that in lots of different industries as well.
True, very true. I'll be coming back to you in a while. I'd like to now call Mr. Ian Matthews, who's the partner of Moore Kensington Smith LLP. Ian, are you around?
I am, yes. Hi.
Hi. Welcome to today's session. What would you really, your key ask from both the governments be so that, you can facilitate trade?
Of course. We've been working with the UK-India corridor now for 30 odd years. I know I don't look it. But one of the real main areas we've focused in on in that relationship is the service trade. It's that service industry and the people that facilitate that there are more, predominantly tech businesses, that there are more actual Indians applying for visas and actually in the UK than all the other countries put together. And that's because they are job creators. They really create so much investment and economic activity in the UK. And so immigration is such a key part of that relationship. And that's both ways. And so to try and really promote India on an equal par and footing as the US and some of our European partners, we've actually worked with the CII actually in promoting a social security agreement, which there isn't one actually, and that requires a little bit from both governments really to really look at. So to put into perspective, if an Indian business comes over to the UK and transfers a member of staff on a visa, they get the first 52 weeks of national insurance contributions exempt. But if someone from America comes over, they get 5 years. And it's the whole argument of actually of recognizing that India is such an important trading partner for us that actually we need to treat them as such. And I'm not saying that the UK government is to blame on this one at all. Actually, it has to be an agreement between two, and there has to be a bit of give and take from both parties. Indian businesses employ about 150,000 people in the UK, but actually there are about 600 companies in India and thousands of Indian employees actually as well. So it's really to make that as easy as tasks, I'd say, and actually a relatively inexpensive way of doing this would be to have a social security agreement to put people on an equal par.
Actually, that's very true, and that's a huge disparity if you really ask me between 5 years and a few weeks. So, do you think that sometimes, it's all about asking? So do you think that nobody ever asked to be put on an equal footing, or maybe there was no awareness among the Indian communities like PICIA or CII that would have put forth this to their counterparts or to the British government saying that, oh, X and Y is getting so many years and we're getting few weeks. So sometimes it's all about asking. What do you say to that?
We've been banging the drum for this with CII in a joint report we've initially released 4 years ago. We re-released it last year. And we're really trying to grasp the nettle on this one, because one of the key parts of the JETCO as well is that CII have been allocated some key elements to campaign around. And a lot of lobbying bodies have, such as EICBI, have those key asks. There are many of them, and it's getting open the doors to the right people. And for me, when previously met with Prime Minister Modi, and I echo the rest of the panel, there's an obvious connection there that with the governments between India and the UK, and it's really incumbent on us as well to really shout about those asks and to really promote and to really fight for it, because if we're not careful, we're going to struggle to really cement those common bonds that we have as nations. It's a trade that we do amongst the countries. The UK is an important trading partner to India, but Germany is actually even more an important one if you look purely at the figures. And we shouldn't just assume because we have a shared love of cricket and other things that frontier. And yeah, you're right. It's incumbent on us to really keep arguing and really pushing the points, such as this.
True. I think that's where we need people like you to really drive the point through. So I'll be coming back to you in a while. So now I'd like to bring in who's CEO of the India Business Group. Amarjit, you welcome.
I thank you, Manpreet and Sujit and colleagues. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon. So, my question to you is, there have been quite a few high-level bilateral visits and government talks between India and the UK. And 2021 is seen as new era between India and the UK relations, especially post-Brexit. Everybody is expecting magic and miracles to happen. Can you tell us more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's well recognized that the mood music has shifted and it's very more upbeat. And if we look at the last 6 months, there's been a flurry of British senior ministers that have traveled into India despite the pandemic with the view to exploring and negotiating the enhanced trade partnership between both countries. And there's a real commitment from both nations to kind of provide a more comprehensive and stronger trading relationship, more business, more investment. As we heard from other panelists, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was supposed to visit India twice this year, but was forced to cancel due to the pandemic. We're expecting Prime Minister Modi or senior Indian ministers visit the UK later for the G7 taking place in June, Cornwall, also for the COP26. But it's not just confined at the government level. I think if we look at particularly what's happened in the last week in India, the devastating effects of the pandemic, and we all stand fully in full support and solidarity with our family and friends and the people of India. But we've had a number of businesses step up throughout the pandemic and in the last week to offer support. We've had the Indian diaspora. There's been a number of appeals raised by organizations like the UKIBC, CBI, the British Asian Trust. So I think there's a genuine desire in both countries to do more together. And actually, it's really important given the UK's kind of tilt towards the Indo-Pacific with their new review. With Brexit, as you mentioned, India is a key trading nation. I mean, predicted by the IMF, of course, to grow at 12.5% post 2022. So I think the broader landscape is more conducive of better engagement between both countries, not just at government levels. Governments just provide the framework for businesses to interact and actually trade and exchange.
Perfect, I would say. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up, especially when the trade increases, the opportunities also increases rather exponentially, if I may say so. So do you think that what could be the key opportunities that could come out or emerge from an enhanced partnership between the UK and India?
So the enhanced trade partnership is obviously envisaged to provide a kind of route map towards strengthening and growing trade with a view to leading to a kind of all-encompassing, a comprehensive free trade agreement. I think the opportunities are really broad and touch across all sectors. And so if you look at where the collaboration exists at the moment, you've got advanced manufacturing, healthcare, education. There's more scope with things like legal services. We've just heard from Pranav that liberalization has been on the cards for many, many years. But India is gradually opening up in certain sectors. If you look at the FDI cap changes recently in the defense sector, in the insurance sector. So I think they're broad, but where I think the greatest potential perhaps lies, and this was touched upon by Priyanka, I think is in technology, because both nations are technology innovators. They're digitally driven. And if we look at some of the work happening at the moment in both countries coming together to produce new age technologies, green technologies, which will address some of the pressing climate change issues. So there's already a strong springboard within the tech space. And if we look at the inbound investment in the UK, telecoms and technology is the largest sector. There's a number of big Indian brands in the UK like TCS, HCL, Wipro, Infosys. They're servicing the public and private sectors, but equally you've got disruptive UK startups and scale-ups which are going into India to provide those new age technologies and solutions. So I think technology in terms of e-tech, med-tech, fintech, agri-tech, the list goes on, will actually be an explosive area in the short to mid-term as being mutually beneficial to both countries, but also addressing some of the cross-cutting global challenges facing the world.
Very true. Thank you, Amarjit, for that point of view. And you really mentioned your emphasis on the tech partnerships and the technology-wise that we're going on. On the technology part and about people-to-people contact, Priyanka, I'd like to come back to you on this one. How do you think that the industry academic partnerships can flourish? And how can India collaborate with the universities and the companies in the UK and contribute to research, which is one of the most important, especially when you talk about fintech. Fintech is changing the world completely, and it's a different ball game altogether right now.
Sure. Thanks, Manpreet, and thanks, Amarjit, for your very valuable insights. Yeah, very interesting question, Manpreet. And obviously, this is the right time to talk about it because we are talking about how we can strengthen the collaborations between both the countries. So, as you would know, a lot of these bodies that Amarjit just mentioned, like, for example, CII, FICCI, UKIBC, even EICBI, they are all strengthening cross-border transactions, exchange of information. There are a lot of universities which are actually using platforms such as UKIBC to enter the Indian market and collaborate and partner with Indian universities. And when you're talking about academic collaborations, you're also talking about research. So there's the UK-India Education and Research Initiative, which also takes care of and kind of strengthens collaboration in the field of research. In the private sector, a very good example of collaboration in the field of research is the healthcare sector, like what you just saw in terms of vaccines. So vaccines were created so quickly because both the countries exchanged information and both the countries worked so well together that we were able to come up with a miracle vaccine such as the Oxford vaccine. So these are just some examples to show how research can kind of benefit in the academic as well as in the corporate sector between both the countries. And in the field of fintech, so India is a pioneer in terms of fintech, but limited to, I would say, payment systems. Like we are using Paytm extensively in India everywhere. So it's I think case studies should be done on this, because how well India has kind of adapted to using payment systems like Paytm. Like even the smallest shop vendors are using Paytm to take or cash in their payments while they're selling their products. So it's a very, very interesting and innovative system that India has adapted to in the name of fintech. But I think where UK and India can kind of partner is in the field of wealth management and open banking, because you look at companies such as Revolut and Nutmeg, which are really huge in the UK now. And they kind of add value in the wealth management and open banking fintech system in the UK. So these are the kind of technologies which can be adapted to in India as well, because there are a lot of wealth management companies and banking institutions in India who could, take heed to all these technologies and kind of build them inside their systems. And the end consumer would actually benefit, because a lot of people, I think India has a very large population who are using smartphones. So it's this kind of ability to adapt would be very, very easy. And I think over a small period of time, this could be executed. So those are my thoughts on fintech.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you think that it's relatively easy? It would be relatively easy for a fintech company from the UK to enter the Indian market, or you think that it's going to be having its own share of challenges? You mentioned the case of Paytm, that it's reached to every nook and corner. Do you think it would be as simple for a British company?
Well, see, nothing is easy when you're like any Indian company to move to the UK or open operations in Europe is challenging as well. But I think there are number of set challenges that you would encounter any country in the world that you go to. But I think what would really help is on the ground local expertise that India can lend, you know, like associations like EICBI or UKIBC or CII, FICCI. So these are very good forums where the companies don't directly have to go and reach out to a partner. They can go through any of these bodies and make their lives easier, you know, and they can help them partner with these banking institutions. So a lot of the banking in India is done through a lot of public sector banks as well as private sector banks. There are very few boutique firms which have kind of flourished, unlike the UK and Europe. So I think there is a lot of scope there of, you know, not just micro lending platforms, but boutique investment firms flourishing in India. And they can kind of adapt to these fintech technologies like wealth management and open banking way quicker than these large banks, like for example, the public sector banks in India. So for them, the progression will be slower. And I think for the newer private sector banks, it would be much easier. That's my feeling.
Very true. And I think with such complicated, small and large and the huge demographic, it comes with its own set of legal problems that you can get entangled with. On the legal point, you know, I would like to bring in Pranav again. Pranav, are you around?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, you know, what do you think, you know, what changes would you like to see in the legal framework between the two regions?
Well, the first thing is I would like to see have been, particularly the Financial Times recently, have been somewhat quite negative towards India, maybe for good reason. For example, there was a big Vodafone case, and I think one of the big kind of perceptions that are coming across is, you know, if you are subject to a court case in India, you know, the chances are that an Indian company may fold, or, you know, it'll be very difficult to enforce a judgment against them. So I would like to see, I think, if anything, more emphasis on a better reputational management, I think, of the Indian legal system in the UK, because I think that is really going to be something that's going to put people off, if I'm being honest. And I'm sure the legal system, there's room for improvement in any legal system, wherever you are in the world. But I think that the impression that lots of people are getting in the UK is that the Indian legal system is incredibly slow. It's, you know, there isn't always the transparency and the independence as there ought to be. And I really would like to see that perception, because I'm not saying that's necessarily the reality. I don't know enough about it, but I'd like to see that perception certainly improving.
True, I think that's true, you know, and you know, some of the points that you mentioned are very much valid, and that's what, you know, across geographies we have also seen. So, you know, that would change the narrative completely if things are taken care of. You know, I mean, that just
I'll give you an example. This week, I read in the Times, there was a story about how judges in Delhi managed to get a suite or a floor in the Ashoka Hotel in Delhi just for themselves, for the sake of oxygen. Now, I don't know whether it's true, and it's not really for me to judge whether it's true or not, but that's an example of the kind of stories that are getting filtered down in the UK press about, you know, things like the independence of the judiciary and the influence the judiciary have in India. And I would like to see an improvement in the legal perceptions between, you know, for both countries really, but certainly the perception that the UK public have of the Indian legal system does need to be improved. Otherwise, it could be a deterrent for organizations to set up, because they'll be worried about what you know, whether they'll, you know, whether legals are going to support them.
True. Actually, that's a much disputed article, but let's not get into that. So, you know, the more and more we get the legal things getting involved, the companies getting involved, that is when you would really need access to markets. So that brings us back to the UK-India free trade deal that you know, it's been working on since a while. What do you think, you know, that it would be like?
sorry, the question, a free trade.
How do you think the free trade agreement between UK and India will be?
Well, I'm hoping
the main point of emphasis.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will go beyond vehicles and whiskey, which I think at the moment everyone's focusing on, about improvement of tariffs between the two. But actually, I think the UK and Japan free trade agreement is actually quite a good starting point in my view. I think certainly food will become a big part of it. Alcohol will be a big part. Vehicles will be a big part. Technology will be a big part. So I think there'll be numerous industries that will really benefit from better tariffs between the two countries. I wish I knew more, but I simply don't, because I don't think there's been very much that's been disclosed at this stage.
True, very true, and that is what we need to push in that point. That coming back to the point where we need to ask that, okay, this is what we need, this is what the industry needs, and this is what the businesses from both the countries need, and we need. This is the points of where the trade would become easier. So that brings me to Ian back again. Ian, are you around?
I am.
Okay, so in this kind of a scenario, what are the main reasons that your Indian clients come to you and ask you to set up in the UK?
Well, we have two types of Indian clients looking to set up in the UK. You've either got one which is trying to set up from scratch, so setting up their own operations in the UK, looking to then really develop it as a market. In those situations, the main attraction really is the UK as a market. Generally, it is the 5th biggest economy. It is as mentioned by the panel earlier, it's a great case study to then replicate to across the world. So a lot of my Indian-based businesses who've set up in the UK are truly global. Actually, they are very, very mobile. If they're setting up in the UK, make success of it, they then replicate that in the US or mainland Europe. So they for me, that is one great pull for that. But also it's the common law. I know there are obvious issues, as already mentioned, but there is a lot in common as well. There's a common language. There's that connection I was talking about earlier as well. One of the key things to really consider when I advise my clients on when they do set up in the UK, it's trying to find out what their plan is, to really go in and understand what's their value proposition going to be coming into the UK, because making that decision of who knows the company and who knows the market, and just trying to make sure that there's the right marriage there. The second type of business that I really deal with is when it's established UK Indian business looking to directly buy into the UK. We did a study last year and actually found that one of the main reasons people were looking to acquire in the UK, and as mentioned by some of the guys previously, predominantly in the tech market, because the UK is seen as a natural partner in that, it's to acquire high growth businesses, to look at the niche businesses which can bolt on and really add on. If you look at some of the top Indian businesses last year, and just looking at acquisitions they did within India, because last year was still a busy year for TCS and Wipro on the acquisition trail, they were looking at companies that would actually add value, or high growth. It was that capability that they were acquiring. And actually looking at the businesses, which a lot of the acquisitions in the UK over the last year, it's been to acquire those niche capabilities. Last year, there were about 27 deals of Indian companies acquiring a European-based company, 10 of which were in the UK, 4 of which were tech. It's really looking at that element and actually saying, well, actually, the UK is highly attractive for this. And then it's us advising our clients, going, like, come here to the UK, acquire these, look at the highly, still, in my opinion, one of the biggest tax incentives in the world with our R&D tax credit, looking at patent box, looking at our IP protections. It's all of that really paints an overall picture, which makes it very attractive to my clients.
True. And I'm sure that it's actually, and in reality, very much attractive. Being here, sitting here, I can tell you that this is the place to be. So that brings me to my last question for the session. That would be to Amarjit Singh ji. Amarjit ji, what one advice would you give to the UK businesses that are looking to India as a market, and vice versa, where the Indian businesses are looking to get into the UK?
Thank you. So India Business Group, we've been advising SMEs and big businesses and universities on cross-border deals, transactions, joint ventures for over a decade now. And I think if we look at how successful entry strategies have been formed, well, a lot of it's basic stuff. So you've got to do your homework on understanding the regulations which apply to your particular sector, product, technology, or service. And I'm sure that advice will be seconded by all the eminent lawyers on this particular chat. You've got to do on the ground detailed market research because, for example, if you're going from the UK into India, well, it's essentially 28 different countries at different stages of economic development with different business environments, with different priorities. So you've got to be ultra focused and specific. So you've got to narrow in on not just a state, but a city or a region. How do you penetrate those business networks to really understand that the kind of local intelligence, what are the price points that will actually be sustainable? You can't adopt a one size fit all approach in India. But I think my biggest advice would be, and this is where, I've also got a legal background, so we've advised on kind of legal as well as consulting. And where we've seen relationships go wrong is where a business in either jurisdiction finds the wrong partner. So I think investing, doing your due diligence in potential business partners at an early stage and actually sense making with them in terms of making sense of the landscape, the strategic vision and intent. So are you aligned in the short, mid and long term on what success may look like? So those are the kind of really practical areas where I think businesses can really help minimize their outlay because going into global markets is not just expensive, but a long-term affair, but it can also help them maximize opportunities and success and scale up and achieve larger outcomes in a shorter timescale and investment.
Thank you.